right. Welcome to Mine Explorers, episode 64 or 5. I think 65 now.
Sure.
And we have a great guest. This is Jim Reed, founder and president of RockWare, as well as many other things. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you. I got to correct you first. I'm not the president. I'm the co-owner with my dumber younger brother
There you
and Tom
go.
Reed. And Tom handles all the financial stuff, and I'm in charge of the geo stuff. So
Oh, you get the fun stuff.
Yeah.
that's exactly right. So
Yeah, you
anyway,
get the fun
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, the management stuff and the financial stuff. I've never been really good at that. So yeah, it's good to have
I was happy to hand that off immediately.
somebody else to do that, and we can focus on the fun stuff, which is
Exactly.
great.
So anyway, well, in terms of just a quick CV type thing, started at University of Wyoming, ended up at Washington University in St. Louis. Um, while there, I got a job with the Viking mission, the NASA Viking mission on Mars, and that was very much the program there was very much planetary, and so. Um, but at the same time, I had a side job for Arch Minerals doing coal in southern Illinois. That's where I first got a taste of doing volumetrics and that kind of stuff. It's also where I got a taste for the mindset of folks who don't get it. What I mean by that is I had seven bosses and they were all mining engineers and they were doing their volumetrics by doing vertical profiles, spaced vertical profiles. Then they would construct polygons. And I remember I wrote this program. Had an Apple II, and the so I started fitting surfaces and showed them how you could subtract surfaces and how it's so much better. And they said, just do it our way. And so, I kind of filed that in the back of my head of, "Arr." And
Yeah.
then, yeah, from there, I chased a girlfriend to Tucson for a summer job right after graduation, and thought I was going to go on to UMass, but I didn't know what a head frame was when I got there, and I got this job with Freeport doing exploration, and just fell in love. And I said, I'm not going to, because I was destined for academia, and but this was just too much fun and too interesting. So did that, and then moved over to AMAX exploration, and this is mostly in the Southwest and the sort of Northern California, and just jumping all over the place. My first job, I remember at Freeport, they said, um, go find all the abandoned mines in the Southwest,
Hmm.
and here's the keys to a new truck and a credit card. I mean, for a
Wow.
20-year-old something, how can
Yeah.
I
Oh
look?
man, we would have loved
Oh,
that.
that's a
I'll
dream
tear up.
job. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, but because of the computer background from the Viking stuff, um, I started very early, got one of the first Apples and rehoused it in a 19-inch rack because it didn't look cool enough, it's in that beige case. So it ended up all these peripherals, just crazy stuff. And I ended up with a trailer that I would to haul my computer around to these
Wow.
small towns. And so then I guess I got lonely, I guess, because this was all, isolated exploration. Ended up getting married, moving to Denver, and starting RockWare. And the, I guess at some point, probably about 20 years ago, we started doing consulting on the side. And the initial reason was, well, financial, but also it was to test our own software. Because
Hmm.
as I like to joke with our classes, I say, we hate the software just as much as you do, but we get to do something about it. And I think it was probably the best thing we ever did was to start becoming real end users of it ourselves.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so that's been so going back to the quick bio. And then about 40 years ago, I was approached by a friend who uh, said, you need to do something civic. And because I was so focused on making money. And so I said, well, so what do you do? And he said, well, I sew gowns for the church choir. And I thought, well, that's not for me. And and then I got a call, this strange call from a guy named Clark Davenport, who a geophysicist at the time. And uh, Clark told me about this bizarre group that was just forming up a volunteer collection of scientists and crime scene investigators who would assist law enforcement in locating hidden or clandestine grave sites. And that turned into a passion because it's basically exploration. It's the same damn thing with, you got in terms of geophysics and geology and geomorphology. And then we brought in other things like entomology and archaeology and anthropology and all these ologies. And most of the people in the group are people who've been promoted out of what they got into the science for. So these are people who are desk bound, and especially for me, it was a chance to get out and do it. But it really is very similar, almost identical to mineral exploration. The difference is you got about 48 hours as opposed to five
Wow.
years or plus. So I get the call. I tell my wife, fetch my cape, and I get to go be a crime fighter. And we also do expert testimony, and we have a 1 week class every year for law enforcement. And we only answer to law enforcement. We've done work in Russia and Australia, UK, Guatemala. So it's definitely an international thing. So right now it's balancing the consulting with the software development, which has taken a incredible turn for the last 3.5 years with AI, and then doing the NecroSearch stuff. So that's my CV.
Wow.
That's
So
fascinating.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions. Um, Very interesting. So I think kind of starting at the beginning. So the Viking mission, you were calculating planetary volumetrics for what purpose? What were they being used
no,
for?
no, no. My role there was making coffee.
Making coffee, yes.
and or and bringing it to people. No, I did a bunch of dark room work at the beginning, and or during the some of the first imagery that was coming back.
Wow.
Our legislators did not like the red sky, so I was one of the first guys to capitulate and change it to a blue sky. So there was but so that's bad science. But anyway, that was done really kind of as a gag, but it took on a life of its own. Anyway,
Huh.
what I was mostly doing was trying. We had two cameras on. There were two landers, two cameras on each. They're separated by about arm's length distance, and they were so crude. They were basically just cylinders with a diode array at the base that would rotate with red, green, and blue, and then you had a mirror that would pivot, and then the whole thing would rotate. And so, and the resolution was probably about 640 by 480. So really, I
Yeah.
mean, $2 million cameras,
Yeah.
and they're a joke by today's standards. But because they were separated by distance, we could look at an object and have stereoscopic vision. And and I remember we actually set up two monitors pointing at each other, and then took a stereoscope and adjusted the stereoscope so we could see in 3D these images from Mars. And it was really a blast. And so I briefly went out to the Jet Propulsion Lab. The only desk they had at the time was Carl Sagan's. He was out of town, and so I got to sit in Carl's desk,
Wow.
and then the and then along came Voyager, and those spectacular images of the moons of Jupiter, um, and I couldn't impress girls anymore with the picture, this dead red planet. It was, and so the handwriting was on the wall that this wasn't going to work out in the long run. So, but I've kept in touch with all my old colleagues there, and it's I think I made the right choice.
Yeah.
Wow, what an experience,
Yeah,
though.
that's fascinating, the technology. I mean, and we're not talking about, in geologic time, we're talking about a blink of a second and just how much has changed in technology. I mean, throughout one career, it's just
Oh yeah.
mind-boggling. It's so
I guess,
fascinating.
where to put it in perspective, when I started at Wyoming, we were taught uh, about geosynclines and myogeosynclines, and which I remember at the time didn't make any sense. That you dump a bunch of sediments off of the mouth of a big, the Mississippi, the Nile, et cetera, and it gets to a critical mass where the whole thing rises up and forms a mountain chain, and
Yeah.
that was Geo 101, and I remember. Well, you have to bear in mind these were the drug years, so it made sense. But and then when I got to WashU, I went out and bought $200 worth of books, which that was a lot of money then.
Yeah.
And came into the first classes and they said, well, all those textbooks, pitch them.
Hmm.
We're going to be going off the latest publications, off Science or Nature or Scientific American, because there's this new thing, this plate tectonics thing. And to have lived through that phase, I just feel so fortunate that where we had to rethink everything, and it really, that was a profound influence on how I see the world now. It's very dynamic.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, learning
and
that, yeah, that neuroplasticity and being able to change such a huge paradigm shift early in your
Mm-hmm.
experience and career. I think that really is important, because then you look at everything later as a bit suspect, which is the way you should if
yeah,
you're scientifically
critical
thinking. Yeah.
critical thought,
Mm-hmm.
critical thought.
Yeah.
And we were able to apply that to Mars because notice that on one hemisphere you have craters, on the others you don't. On one hemisphere you got old material, on the other you don't. On one hemisphere you have compressional features, thrust faults. On the other hemisphere you've got extensional features. So came up with this thing that Mars is basically a toroid, or its plates. It's a big donut that it started to upwell on one hemisphere, and then by the time it got to the other one, instead of breaking up into subplates like Earth has, it ran out of heat. So
Huh.
it's but the thing I do miss is the whole concept of comparative planetology, as well, I think of it as planetary embryology, that you're looking at. If you look at all the different planets, you can start to see different phases of how planets evolve, and that was my takeaway from the whole thing, as I've had a chance to digest it. But
Planetary
anyway,
embryology.
That's
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
I don't quote me on that. I
No, I
just
think it's a great way to think about it. No, really, because they're
It's like
all
little different
they're all a
stages
little
in the life
different, and they
cycle.
all go through different stages of the life cycle. And I mean,
Yeah.
there's physical constants, and then there's just so many infinite variables in how things can play out over
yeah,
time and space. That's fascinating.
yeah,
Wow. And I'm still imagining you driving around looking at old mines in Arizona and dragging your computer in a trailer. That's a dream for me. I mean, I love getting out in the truck and going to look at old mines. That's
that,
something that I love to do, and it's the dream to not have any other responsibilities and literally just do
Well,
that.
that's how we started our company, was doing abandoned mine exploration.
Yep.
But not for a big
yeah.
company, but on like a small scale.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
that's where when I first met Stuart, that's when I realized we're kindred spirits, because that's what I want to do with my spare time,
Yeah.
is just go. In fact, we're getting ready to go to Coeur d'Alene, and going to
Oh.
be exploring mines along the way. And
Oh,
I've
Oh,
got
how
beautiful.
I've got two
fantastic.
mine tours lined up. It's a family thing, and I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna tell them we got golf reservations, and let's get in the car, and then I'm going to take them to the mine tours.
There you go.
So see what happens.
I'm doing
So,
that this summer. We're going to Cornwall, and I've got tours lined up at some tin mines. So I'll say
oh,
I'll say we're doing
oh,
something
I'm going.
similar. Yeah, yeah. Oh, Coeur
That's,
d'Alene's so
you know,
beautiful.
one of the mines there in Cornwall, the depths, if you look at the cross sections, are in fathoms.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it goes out under the ocean, which
yeah,
I thought, imagine,
Oh, it's
I'm not really, I've never done fathom-based
yeah,
geologic mapping, so
yeah,
how
that'd be a new
interesting.
experience.
yeah.
Anyway,
Fathoms, knots.
yeah,
Because you're under the ocean.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
They do. They go into the ocean. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
So RockWorks, I think I read on your website you have 30,000 different customers and different applications. And
Well, that's a marketing hype. If you look at the lifespan of it, since we started in '83, if we counted everybody and said that's an outstanding license, I would chop that into a third and say it's probably 10,000 users at any given,
yeah,
moment.
That's
still
But
that's
very
for
impressive.
most of the,
significant. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
you're not
it,
talking about a consumer product, YouTube or
yeah, I
Candy
wish.
Crush or something. This is pretty technically specific software. So, I mean, there are
Well,
only at any given time 10,000 entities on the planet that are doing that kind of work. So you've got a real good cross section there.
Well, it's basically divvied up. The bulk of that is groundwater contamination, groundwater modeling, or monitoring, more static stuff. But that's the one that's put most of our kids through college. It's been probably the best long-term market. I don't really care for it personally because there's no magma involved,
Right.
and I like magma, and
Yeah.
but like I say, you gotta you gotta follow the money. So that's been our best long term. The problem with that is that most of the engineering outfits or the environmental companies who are doing it, um, they're going through churning through cycles, and so they'll go dark for 2 years, no, 5 years. They'll go, we won't hear from them, and all of a sudden they repurchase it. And we say, well, you've already got it. You can just update your license, and but they're billing their clients for it, and so it's kind of I'm not complaining about that, but it's kind of a there's just no uh, long term. The longest we've ever worked on a project now is probably 5 years, off and on of updating as they drill new monitor wells. But that's anyway, that's one market, our biggest market. The next one, or not, these are not in order. I'm going to random free associate. There's civil engineering, just site characterization. That's a good market for us. And I would lump things like canal dredging, harbor dredging, uh, into those markets, and they've been good for us. Beach restoration, believe it or not, is a visible sector on our pie chart,
Hmm.
and where they're, basically going out, drilling offshore, and then pumping back on to restore these beaches. So I like hurricanes.
Yeah.
They're good for business, uh, and then there's all these peripheral markets, agriculture. They're starting to do 3D modeling, at least 2D, of fertilizers and stuff. And then there's gas stations, which would tie into environmental. The mining. I split mining up into two groups. There's the base and precious metals, and then I would subdivide that up into the big guys and the little guys. And the little guys like our stuff. But once you get into super complex modeling, if you're doing something, Carlin type monster mine, we lose out to the big guys because
Gotcha.
yeah, because we started out at like I think 49.95, $50 for the program, and now we're up to about 2 to 6 grand depending on features. Um, and whereas when we first entered the market, the cheapest software was 70 grand. And
Oof.
so
Whew,
we've
yeah.
always been, we started out as the bottom feeders, and we've basically migrated up into sort of where some people are taking us seriously. I know in uh, the sort of the middle of the market is where we're comfortable. And then I would split that, or anyway, so we sneak in on people's expense accounts for the majors, whereas with the smaller guys, some of them are using it, taking it all the way through their projects. So because
Wow.
there's 1,000 programs in RockWorks, a
Yeah.
1,000 programs,
Yeah.
and what's so there's always something that somebody's going to want. I
Yeah.
want to do stereo nets, I want to do rose diagrams, as opposed to the hardcore users. We've got an integrated uh, relational database at the core. So you put all your drill holes in, then you make models and then do pits and volumetrics and that kind of stuff. But the other market that I split out for mining would be industrial minerals,
Yeah.
and which is probably where my heart is, because I left something out of my CV description where um, after Amex, I went off to a small company called Wold, WOLD, based in Casper. And from there, I got into uranium and then into talc, baby powder, and out in the Trans-Pecos of West Texas. And that's where I fell in love with industrial minerals. And I remember, well, my talk at FGIM was that my mother, when I told her I was getting into industrial, she said, "Well, can I still tell my friends that you're looking for gold?" So that 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 lack of
That's great.
respect for industrials, I think, is is ill deserved, because as everybody knows, industrials are double the amount of money that are in base and precious metals combined.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
So, but nevertheless, and I've got a project right now it's the best of both worlds, because it's a porphyrite deposit in the Mojave that's sitting on top of a porphyry copper gold lead system, and so I'm able to play both. And if I had, this is a dream come true to be able to combine those things. But
Yeah. It's rare.
that's where my heart is, I would say. But still, I gotta keep working on stuff that pays the rent, so
Yeah.
it keeps the lights on. But
Yeah,
so,
you found, was it the largest talc deposit in the United States?
oh, not only that, but that was when I was 28 years old,
Wow.
and 19 million tons. And then I got a call from the owner of the company 20 years later. And this
Wow.
guy was one of my idols, John Wold. And I thought, he doesn't make social calls. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, that was a 20-year reserve. So they're running out.
Yeah.
So I went back and spent I don't know, about a month, 2 months out there, and then broke the world, or the record, with 190 million tons. So an order of
Wow.
magnitude more. And the neat thing is, I had a baseline. What took me 2 years, when I was 28, took me 2 months when I was 56.
Hmm.
And so, which led to another a presentation I canned, about what's changed since I had this baseline.
Yeah.
Well, and it's some of the things you wouldn't expect, like the stiff hinge on the new Brunton, or at that time the new to me Brunton, and the way you hold the button down and release it, and it locks on. Well, that way I was able to get 50 zillion times more strikes and dips than I did, because the structure there is out of this world.
Hmm.
And so, I start with that, and then I move through having, handheld GPS. Well, man,
Yep.
it really made me appreciate how much time I was, because most of my surveying, or locating myself at that time, was off horrible air photos that I
Yeah.
would take from a plane, a little private plane that this pilot, who was, by the way, a Holly Zeiler, and she was a WAF during World War II, flew B-17s over to Europe. A
Wow.
really,
Wow.
really neat lady.
That's
And
cool.
anyway, she'd fly me around. I'd take pictures. I'd try to map off those, but they're all skewed and oblique, and so that was cumbersome. But most of the surveying was triangulation. And
Wow.
when you think about off peaks and how inaccurate that is, and the idea of holding a button down and getting a longitude latitude was truly breakthrough. And then Google Earth back at the hotel.
Yeah.
All it was night and day. And so I don't know. Let me see, 365 times 2 divided by 60. I don't know what that is, but it was a couple orders of magnitude in increase in productivity, and then
Hmm.
calculating the resources. In the old days, I was using graph paper
Yeah.
and making contours, counting the number of cells, and now pressing a button and
Yeah.
having adding another borehole, no problem. Press the button. And so that because one of the problems with talc is it drills very fast,
Oh
and
yeah.
you're drilling through baby pot and until you hit one of these silicified Boudin where the bit just is destroyed instantly, and you have to trip out and change bits. So that was a hazard, but nevertheless, the that big difference in the technology. I mean, what a I look at how blessed I've been, and you got the plate tectonics thing, and then you got this techno explosion that changes everything. So it's been a good time. It's been a good ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like
Yeah,
it.
we on industrial minerals, we love industrial minerals. I've been
Oh yeah.
heavily involved recently in looking for critical minerals. Obviously, it's the thing everybody's looking for, tungsten.
The shiny things.
Yeah, yeah, things like that. But
Tiny
then
things.
really, I'm interested in pozzolan. I've been looking a lot at pozzolan. I see that as being a big future thing. I also gave a presentation at FGIM on that. But I mean, a base, we very intentionally about 10 years ago diversified our company away from the metals cycles and the boom and bust and into sand and gravel, crushed stone, and built
Hmm.
up expertise in that so that we had a steady, and it ebbs and flows, but it's nowhere near what happens in the
No.
metals. So yeah,
Well,
we
there
love
there's a
industrial.
qualifier there. That's sand, and with the frac sand stuff,
Yep.
we've noticed there are some boom bust cycles
Oh
that
Oh,
are starting
yeah.
to look
oh,
a little
we.
bit like uranium,
Yeah.
which we've experienced. I've learned. This is getting superstitious. I've learned a valuable lesson because one of the things about and I'm going to put uranium in with the industrials. One of the things I've noticed is that um, they're much more price sensitive, these markets.
Yep.
So try to sell ma and pa sand and gravel operation on a $70,000 a year license, and that's going to be tough.
Yep.
So we kind of squeak in there, and because of that, I think the people I know in the industry, which is a lot, um, they're humble. They're not the prima donnas that we see in some of our other markets.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
didn't say oil and gas, but but nevertheless, I found that they're much more earthy
Yeah.
about stuff and practical, and because chances are the site geologist is also doing the land work
Yep.
and the drilling and on and on,
Oh yeah.
and so they seem to be uh, more around it. And then when I think about people like Roger Sharp and Tom Newman and these guys at these big industrial minerals companies, you think, well, I mean, the assumption I think that some people might make is, oh, they're not very worldly. Those guys have been around the planet 10 times,
Yep.
and
Hmm.
they
Oh
they've
yeah.
seen everything. And
Yep.
so it's uh, I hope none of our other markets see this video because I'm bad mouthing them. So, but I don't mean to. Thank you everybody for all your business.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's uh, when I look at the boom bust of sand and gravel with the frac sands, it reminds me of when there was one day years ago. I looked at my dumber brother, my business partner, and I said, I think RockWare owns the uranium market because we're doing a lot of training for uranium companies and all that. The next day was Fukushima.
Oof.
The next day after I said
Oh,
that. So I don't say things like that anymore
Yeah.
yeah.
because I think I jinxed the whole and I caused I'm sorry I caused Fukushima, but I
Yeah,
think
yeah. And we're just recovering from that now in the uranium market.
Yeah.
Literally
yeah,
Yeah.
just in the
I,
last year.
I, I'm heading up next week to do a training consulting thing in Wyoming, Canadian uranium, and I think it's starting to come back. The
Yeah.
last time, during the last boom, they were so desperate to pull in old people. We did a class where the majority, I'm not exaggerating, the majority of the class had oxygen tanks.
Wow.
And, and they told me, and this is no joke, somebody there told me that the average age was 80.
Wow.
So that was kind of surreal. But
Yeah.
with this boom, I think the need for education is going to be paramount. And um, and I don't want to rant, but I can't help it. Um, we've noticed a massive closing down of geology departments at
Yep.
these
Yeah.
universities.
Mm-hmm.
University of Tulsa just closed their geology department. That's
Wow.
the
Mm.
state that has an oil rig on the Capitol,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I mean a working pump jack, and so I think there's going to be a crisis
Yep.
coming up,
Yeah.
but I don't want to rant because I've got so many.
No,
And,
it's a
That's
good
that's
thing,
been a topic
and
we've
it's
been.
been a topic we've had on our show. So we
Hmm.
had Dr. Bishop on a couple of times, and we've talked about it. And I did a piece on in the United States, in the Western world, United States, Canada, Australia, they graduate about 400 mining professionals every year. And I use the word professionals loosely because obviously they're not experienced. And I got all sorts of comments on LinkedIn about you
Educated.
can't call them professionals yet. Okay. 400 people who graduate with advanced degrees in mining, whether it be economic geology, mining engineering, um, metallurgy, what have you. Um, and China graduates 20,000 a year.
20,000 versus 400.
Yeah. Yeah. The 400 figure actually does include economic geologists, but say add another few hundred to that. But it's
Yeah.
that's
It's
just
low.
mining engineers, metallurgists, things like that. It's the 400, but it's a massive contrast. And so where the Western world wants to catch up to China in rare earths and advanced materials and batteries and EVs and all this stuff, we really literally just don't have the brain power.
This wasn't part of my plan to be a god at age 80. I, I, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So, but I think that, yeah, there's a pent-up demand that
Oh,
Hmm.
that's
for
just
sure.
growing and growing.
Yeah, I mean
So,
it's almost impossible to retire. If I hear about a mining professional who say they're going to retire, I almost always see them again 6 months later, a year later, and they're on their
yeah,
second or third. I have a friend who's a geologist up here with Rio Tinto in Kennecott, and he's retired twice now, and they just keep putting him on a contract. So he retired, got his pension, now he's back on retainer as a contractor. Now he's on an extension of that second contract, and
Hmm.
so
yeah.
and there's just nobody to replace him. I mean, and you mentioned Tom Newman. I mean, what a great geologist. I mean, he could have retired a long time ago, and
He did. He
yeah,
did. They won't let him.
yeah.
So,
Right.
And
well, in
he's
fact,
finally
even
training,
yeah.
replacements and stuff, but it's been a long process.
Even at RockWare, we've lost three geologists who because we joke that it's a lifetime position because we've got people who work there for 40 plus years.
That's
And
amazing. Yeah.
so I'm looking at handcuffs on,
Yeah.
that'll attach to chairs, start drilling some holes and put some eyelets in and start cuffing people and saying, you can't retire.
Yeah.
That's just not part of the deal. So
Yeah.
anyway, but well, we're not alone.
Yeah.
I think it's a shared a problem throughout the industry.
No, it
So
is. It is
eh,
absolutely. Definitely want to touch on, before we run out of time, your work with NecroSearch, where you said there are a lot of similarities. Instead of looking for ore bodies, you're looking for human bodies, but you're
well, no, we're
using a
not
lot of the
looking for
same
bodies. We're
techniques.
looking for the disturbance associated with digging the grave. We
Ah,
can't find bodies. That's too hard. That's why people bury bodies because it's too hard to find them.
right,
But so what we're looking at is you start out with, say, electromag, and and it's just same as the other ones, except the unit's shorter. The distance between the transmitter and the receiver is just shorter because we want resolution, but we don't need that depth.
right.
So so instead of two helicopters with hoops or along like at the EM-31, the 10-foot one, we're using a shorter one, about 4 feet long, because if you dig a hole, you're changing, the porosity, permeability. That's what people turn the soil in their gardens. And so we're taking that and mapping that up, but the deal is it has to be fast, because
Right.
because invariably the cops are standing around, the homicide investigators saying, and I always hear somebody saying, I could have dug it up by now, as we're methodically setting out a grid and all this. And
Yeah.
so step one is typical. Well, it's actually step one is do the drone work, do the especially thermal IR, because when you do turn the soil, you're changing how the ground is going to discharge heat. So you want
Ah,
to come in there when there's the biggest differential between air and ground. So that means usually very early in the morning, in the evening.
yeah.
So do the thermal IR, and then do we want to go from least invasive at the beginning. So bring out cadaver dogs, and if possible, do any kind of gas spectroscopy, and then get into let the entomologist look around, and then just geomorphology, looking at, you've seen subsidence at a grave
Yeah.
or at a cemetery. So just all of this is common sense. And then, but anyway, but for me, my passion is starting with the EM, and then we're going to get, because you're going to get variations in soil moisture. You dig a hole, it's going to form a sump for groundwater,
Right.
or if you over compact it, it's going to form a dam. So we're looking for anomalies.
Yeah.
And as the one of my geophysicist friends in NecroSearch says, geophysicists are just bump detectors. They just
Yeah.
look for bumps in the data. And
Yeah.
um, so then uh, once we've got some EM targets, we'll then come in with the ground penetrating radar, and that's where we're really looking at variations in the stratigraphy, because you can't dig a hole and put it back in the same order. And so that combined with going back to the EM, or I'm sorry, to the imagery, the drone imagery, if you've got a good multispectral camera, well, when you dig a grave and put the material outside the grave and put it back in, the grave itself is going to have the material is now mixed.
Right.
So if you've got any kind of layering, which every environment has layering, because we live on this big ball with this gravitational field, um, even when you think about it, even in a house with dust settling, you've got layers being settled. So anyway, so then we go to the ground radar, and then we get into drilling, like or you can also do just a cone penetrometer, a handheld one. They've got just these probes that you can use, and you can do it by touch, or you can we've got a really nice one that's for golf courses. It's a cone penetrometer. It's a rod with it shoots out it's got a sonar thing that measures the distance to the ground, and then a pressure transducer in the handle, and then a computer. And so you can build penetrometer logs and make a 3D model and say, "Ooh, look, we'll slice through it. There's, this material here is much less compacted or overly compacted." And so now we're getting into stratigraphy.
Wow.
And then once you start excavating, there's like a test trench, there's garbology, where which is paleontology. If we find a Frito-Lay bag chunk, well, the Frito-Lay company has changed that bag design over the years.
Yep.
So, and there's somebody at Frito-Lay's, if you spend enough time on the phone, who knows all about that.
Yeah.
And so calling them, okay, when did you change to this? I'll send you a picture. When did you change to this type of
Yeah.
bag? And so those are your index fossils.
So
So
hang on. So is garbology a term you made up? Because that's a great one.
no, there's a guy, a pioneer at the University of Arizona, and I'm embarrassed that I've forgotten his name, who first started out years ago taking his students out to landfills. And they're the ones who discovered that there were hot dogs that were still edible.
Ah,
Because in this country, landfills
They
are
got
sealed.
hungry on the job.
yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And
Starving students is a whole nother
because
level.
they're sealed,
Yeah.
and so they're anaerobic environments. So there's tremendous amount of compaction, but
Hmm.
there's very little decomposition.
Right.
And we've done quite a few landfills with NecroSearch. It's about $1 million to get started on a
Yeah.
landfill
That's
search,
that's
and very
amazing. Yeah.
and I've never participated in one because I never want to, but it's but even a landfill is very geologic. The tipper trucks, when they come in, be it a rail car or regular truck, when it tips, the heavy materials roll down the slope, the finers materials stay on top. So if you do a cross section of a landfill and you go out to Moab and you do a cross section of the sands, they're identical. They're nice four-set cross beds. And so the geological, you know, analogies are, well, they're not really analogies. It's a very geologic process. But there's landfills. We do a lot of water stuff. People put a car in a trunk and roll it into a river. And the determining factor on that is the trunk seal. If you
Hmm.
have a good seal on your I hope no criminals are going to watch this.
I doubt it.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
but just put a disclaimer on it that says criminals do not watch
Do not
this.
watch this.
Yeah. So anyway, the trunk seal determines, and the engine weight and all that determines how far because it's going to turn downward from the weight. If it's up the engine to the front, it's going to point straight down. It's going to float down the river. So, and there's somebody at the Ford Motor Company who can tell you about the trunk seal on that car that was made in that year. Again, with some research, some phone time, because how often does that trunk seal guy get a call on a murder investigation? And
Yeah.
so they're gonna go all out to
Oh
help you
yeah.
out. So it's a lot of fun.
That's
But I
That
think
is
fascinating.
it's
amazing.
Wow.
yeah. But one of the things about that I've learned in the group is that uh, you think, let's say you arrive in some small town, and that sheriff's department there is uh, on a shoestring budget wise, and you kind of assume that you're going to encounter Barney Fife
Yeah.
as the homicide investigator. No, it's the guy who was on Boston homicide who burned out, decided to go out west so he could do some fly fishing, and he's been to the FBI's academy. He's got a master's in criminology, and it's so fun. You go to these little towns and you think it's going to be, uh, you have these ill-formed preconceptions, only to be really pleasantly surprised by how professional some of these folks are. So it's a blast. It really is. And I think the some of the takeaways, we do expert testimony, and when I think back on the first time I did that and how nervous I was, and I was so parched, and there was when the witness stand and there's a glass there and there's a pitcher of water, but there's no way I'm going to try to pour it because I knew I'd make a big mess. And now I go in there and I don't want it to stop.
Yeah.
I just come on because it's really fencing because the defense is out to discredit you.
Right.
I mean, facts, doesn't matter. They just want to discredit you so they can throw out any evidence that you've introduced to the case, which
Right.
is a body. And
Right.
with it's called corpus delicti, where you have no corpse, no conviction.
Right.
But now more and more uh, uh, prosecutors are doing bodiless convictions, if you can dump it on. But it's so much nicer to have a body to show to prove that somebody just didn't disappear and
Right.
all that. So anyway, I could go on and on about this
Wow. Yeah,
stuff.
that's
It's
fascinating.
That is
Yeah.
it's a
wild.
blast.
Yeah, and you've been
Yeah.
doing that for quite some time, haven't you?
Yeah, I think about 40 plus years.
Wow.
And and to be candid about it, the other motivation is when I got out of academia and working for mining companies, I know at some of the conferences and trade shows, I felt mistreated. Like, oh, you're a vendor.
Mm.
Ooh, a vendor.
Mm-hmm.
We'll hide you in the basement and you can
Mm-hmm.
set up your little booth
Mm-hmm.
and peddle your little software. And so I think I've had an insecurity about not being, a field geologist,
Right.
and the NecroSearch thing has provided me with something where I feel like a scientist again. And now with the consulting, I think my ego's kind of come back up a little. I'm not as insecure as I used to be.
Yeah.
So
No, that's great. Great self-awareness, and yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, also as vendors, like it is nice to, in consulting is a little different because we do get out and actually participate in discoveries, and we can put our
yeah,
name on things, and we do get credit occasionally for helping, make discoveries and stuff. But yeah, that's definitely yeah, I could see that being an ego thing and wanting to participate. But then, I mean, the satisfaction of solving a cold case has to be pretty
yeah.
amazing.
Oh, it's every now and then we'll be invited to attend the sentencing. And for me, that's where I get to wave goodbye as they cart some guy off. And I think the world's a little bit safer, a little tiny bit safer. And
Yeah.
that makes me feel, and then the closure, providing closure to families. I never got that until the first time where I walked out of the courtroom after a conviction, and they must have had the extended family for the victim was there. And I was just, the hugs and the tears,
Mm.
and I was crying. Um, and I mean, frankly, I was just out there to have fun,
Right.
to do my thing. But seeing that has been, well, I got a good story where um, there's this case down in southern Colorado where a girl had told her best friend, "I'm going to go tell my boyfriend that I'm pregnant. He'll be so excited." And then her mother got an email in the middle of the night or a text message saying, so and so, her boyfriend was right, that I got pregnant on purpose to destroy his basketball career. I'm going to kill myself. Don't look for me. Goodbye. This text was obviously sent by the girl or
Right.
by the perpetrator.
Right.
And so I'd been working this case off and on for a couple of years, and every time the mother would show up, and I would, I'd scurry off. I'd have to go back to the car, change batteries on a gizmo, and I'd see her walking over, and I'd run away because I just didn't want to deal with it.
Right.
And so finally, a friend in the group said, "You got to deal with this." So I did, and she wanted to help, and I had her running an endoscope in the like coyote dens, looking for the remains of her daughter,
Mm.
and some I anyway. So at the end of the day, her husband showed up and she asked if she could take him and show him around. And I heard her tell her husband, honey, look at this bluff here. This is the Niobrara Formation, and that's where the oil is out in the Denver Basin. And I overheard that, and I thought, my work is done. I
Yeah,
have
yeah,
I have ruined another life with
yeah,
with useless geology.
yeah,
So, but you know that so the emotional side of it is you know that's a real thing.
yeah,
And when I recruit, I go off and I tell all the good stuff, but I say it will get to you.
yeah.
But to have that much fun, but to still have nightmares is it's just the cost you pay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's
Fascinating.
Wow.
What an interesting use of geology and the
oh yeah,
similarities. It's so fascinating to hear about like deposition models of landfills and how that relates
yeah.
to
Well, do you
alluvials and
know
things like that.
you
And it's
know who the first
fascinating.
forensic geologist was? Sherlock
Sherlock
Holmes.
Holmes, yeah.
Because I see by the mud on your shoes that that you are from such and such. And in fact, there was a group called Friends of Holmes or something like that that I gave a talk at, and I remember telling my wife about all this, and she said, "You know he's not a real character, don't you?" I said, "I know, but Conan Doyle was really kind of the first reference to forensic geology,
Yeah,
so that's been kind of fun." But
yeah.
Yeah.
anyway,
That's fascinating.
yeah.
Well, I think we're about out of time for today, which is unfortunate because I would love to hear more stories about all that and love to get into some other things. So I guess we're just gonna have you back on.
Well, the for what it's worth, I'll plant a seed for next time. I've been running four AIs right now,
Wow.
and I'm running the agentic ones that are modifying code.
Yep.
And I just said yesterday to one of my coworkers who's done the same thing that this is the perfect thing for a 70-year-old programmer
Yeah.
because I shouldn't be doing this, and it's I'm on cloud nine. If I were 25, I might be saying something different, but
Yeah.
right now it's perfect. But maybe that's a seed for next time.
Yeah,
There's
that'd be fascinating. Yeah, because you're leveraging your experience with the technology to be able to just sprint so much faster. But you have the wisdom and knowledge to be able to use the AI the right way to make sure that there's not errors and it's not going off. So yeah, that would be a great conversation for next time for sure.
excellent, excellent. Well, it's been a blast. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot for letting
absolutely.
me.
Thanks for being on. Really
Yeah.
appreciate
All
it.
right.
And we'll see you
Okay, we'll see
next
you
time.
guys.
We'll see you.
Bye bye.
Bye.